Hello, and welcome back to the Nourish with Purpose podcast. Gosh, sometimes that's a mouthful. But anyway, I hope you're having a wonderful Wednesday or whenever you're listening to today's episode. I have a really good one for you today, talking about the hot takes and health myths with Fiona. And she's going to share more about who she is, but really just opening up a conversation around topics that have previously maybe been a little controversial or just things that we've believed and maybe not questioned why. So I just wanted to give a preface to this episode that if you disagree, that's totally fine, right? When it comes to our health, we don't have to agree. The biggest thing that I believe that you need to do is focus on what your specific body needs and become an advocate for your own health. And I really think how you do that is just by doing your own research, being educated, or having a few people in your corner that you like, know, and trust, so you can be a conscious consumer and not just go into the world and take everything that people throw at you, but rather you really look at it with a critical eye to examine if it's something that is health supporting or health diminishing. But before we get into that part of today's episode, I wanted to catch up with you a little bit. So this last weekend, Nathan and I put up the Christmas tree. I've been seeing that bows are the hot thing. So I bought some velvet ribbon and did some cute little pink and maroon and green bows on my tree, as well as around my house. I also put up a few of our decorations. Honestly, I have been living in multiple different places. I think for the last 4 or 5 years, I've lived in a different house or apartment. So we have a very small collection of holiday decor. But with what we do have, I did put that up and had to kind of make it work in a new house, which was really fun. And maybe I'll splurge and buy some more holiday decor this year. Probably not, honestly, but I want to get some fresh greenery. We have this beautiful wainscoting on our dining room walls, and so I want to, in the opening between the living room and the dining room, do some fresh greenery. I think it would be really pretty, but other than that, that's probably all I'm going to do. But it was nice. We had on some Christmas music and got to do that on Saturday morning. And then Saturday evening, my childhood best friend got engaged. So that was so exciting. I just love that all of these people around me are getting into the wedding mood and the wedding spirit. It's fun. We've got lots of weddings coming up in the next couple of years, but it's such a good problem to have. And so that was very exciting. On Sunday, we went to church and then we honestly just relaxed. But that's about, a lot of what's been going on. Trying to relax, trying to read a lot more in the evenings. Again, with it being so dark, I just become a hermit and don't want to leave my home. And read an entire book on Sunday. I read the Haven House series and I would recommend them, honestly. I'm anxiously awaiting her release of the next parts of the series. Apparently, she's releasing 3 more Haven House books. This first one was The Secrets That We Keep, and then I can't remember the title of the second book, but those were both really good, which I suppose is also part of the segment, How I'm Nourishing My Mind, Body, and Spirit. How I'm nourishing my mind is just spending less time sucked into Instagram and TikTok and more time reading on my Kindle. If you don't have a Kindle, is something I would recommend you would ask for Christmas if you like reading. Honestly, when I asked for a Kindle, I hadn't read a book for months. But I just knew I wanted to get back into that. And although I love holding a hardcover book, I do enjoy reading more of like those entertaining books on my Kindle. And then if I'm reading a book that has to do with the coaching work that I do or is more self-help, that's when I would recommend having a hardcover, just because I like to take notes and highlight things in those. But loving my Kindle. I'm on book number 24 of the year, and I will brag about that because I am not typically a reader. I don't know. I didn't even know I had read that many books until I looked back. I'm like, I'm pretty impressed with myself. That means I've been spending less time on my phone, which is always just a positive. how I'm nourishing my spirit. You guys know, you've been listening long enough. These are just going to get repetitive. I'm very much a creature of habit, and so I wake up every morning, I do my lymphatic drainage massages, I stretch, and then I make breakfast, do my journal, my 5-minute journal, and I read a chapter of the Bible. And that's really just what I've been doing. I think it's working well for me. Something I have been doing to nourish my body is sleeping in a little bit later. Another trend of these episodes, I'm either on the train of I need to wake up early or I'm going to let my body rest. I can't decide what I want to do. Truthfully, it's not that deep. So I really am just trying to listen to my body. If I'm tired, I'm not forcing myself to get up if I don't have something I have to get up for. Doesn't mean I sleep until 9. I've been getting up around 7, which is still fairly early, but later than my previous goal. If you've been listening for a while, you know I was really on that 5 a.m. train and I never got there. So that's fine. It's those colder months. I always say our body really goes into hibernation mode, and that happens for a reason. And during this season, I don't think it's necessary that we force our bodies to be super rigid with a morning routine, unless that is something that you know, maybe you have no structure around your morning routine. I would encourage you add something in. But if you are somebody who just cannot force your body out of bed, regardless of how early you go to bed that night, just because it's darker for longer spurts of the day, have some grace with yourself. And I think I said that last episode, but our bodies right now, you think of other animals, they go into hibernation mode. We typically try to push on, continue on, and I just don't always think it's necessary that we force our bodies to do that. Unless, you know, obviously there's other situations like work and school that to some extent you have to have structure. And I'm in that same boat. But just be a little more gentle with yourself during this season and enjoy the changing of seasons, especially if you live in a place where it's really cold. I'm trying to convince myself that this is why I love living in Nebraska, because it's the changing seasons and we get to experience sunshine and also snow and rain and falling leaves, and we're focusing on the positive. Don't ask me how I feel about it in January or February, but right now we're feeling good. Thanksgiving is coming up this week, so by the time you're listening to this episode, Thanksgiving is tomorrow. I am really excited because I'm making sourdough bread for our gathering. I'm making one pumpkin-shaped loaf, and then I'm going to try to make a turkey with my other loaf. I will post that on my Instagram and Facebook stories to see, so you can see how that ends up turning out. I'm a little weary about that one, but I figured why not? Super festive, super fun. Thanksgiving is always a great time to spend with family. And if you haven't listened to last week's episode around food during the holidays, I'd really encourage you to do that if you find yourself at a place where you're like not super confident in your relationship with food, or it's something you're stressing about going into this holiday season. Just understanding that, you know, there's so much more to the holiday than just the food you're going to be surrounded with, but focusing on those conversations around you, how you can get your body's family moving during that time in a very gentle way. Post-nourishment walks are my absolute favorite thing to incorporate. But yeah, that's a good episode for you to then give a listen. But happy Thanksgiving. I hope you truly just enjoy this time with family and friends and take it all in. If you find yourself alone this holiday season, I just also hope that you find something that you can do for yourself and with yourself that day, whether it's going out to your favorite restaurant or going for a walk and seeing the fallen leaves, really just romanticizing the day, because I know holidays are not always a positive for people and can feel really lonely and isolating. But I'm just praying over you that you feel comforted this holiday and that you know how loved you are. With that, let's go ahead and get into the bulk of today's episode with Fiona. All right, so hello and welcome back to the Nourish with Purpose podcast. I'm here with Fiona, and we are going to be talking all about hot takes and health myths, and really just dive into it. A lot of things that you might be surprised by, but hopefully we can kind of debunk what you maybe currently think about health or give you another perspective. So, Fiona, welcome to the Nourish with Purpose podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited about this one. This is one of my favorite topics or overarching topics to talk about.
Yeah, and you have the best posts about all myths and diving into that. Can you share a little bit more about yourself, like where you're living, what you do, and what kind of got you interested into health and nutrition?
I am living in Los Angeles, California. I have been here basically my whole life, which has been lovely. I kind of got into health probably 10 so years ago while in college, just trying to figure out a lot of my own struggles with like mental, physical, all of that health, and trying to just figure out a more, I guess, holistic method to fixing a lot of these issues after not really getting much help from doctors and the classic, like, all your testing is normal and you're fine. So just kind of doing my own research and educating myself, trial and error. And then I got certified as a health coach a few years ago. So I work with clients as well, just kind of sharing my knowledge and guiding them in their journeys. And then I'm also a private chef here in Los Angeles, mostly like real food, not fully animal based, but leaning into the more, meat, fruit, dairy types, and trying to really eat like seasonal farm to table for my clients. So that's kind of what I do.
I love it. Oh my gosh, to be a personal chef. Like that just sounds like the best job ever to be able to cook for other people. I know we were talking before too of like you get to have that direct impact on like what they're eating because you can prepare it for them and having access in California to like fresh fruits and vegetables and high quality protein sources. Like that's just has to be so fun.
Yeah, it is really fun. And it's, I get to go to the farmer's market and kind of just buy whatever looks good there and then create a beautiful meal and then see them enjoy it, which is really rewarding. Although it is definitely like a little stressful sometimes or a little nerve wracking to put that out to someone. I really see cooking as an art. So, there are times where people don't love your art, and that's not necessarily a reflection on the quality of it, but just people's preferences. So there's a lot of learning with it too, but it's super fun. I'm very lucky to be able to do this.
Have you ever made a meal and somebody just like hated it? I feel like that'd be my biggest concern of like they take a bite and they're like spit it out. I'm like, oh gosh. Cause like I don't know if you've noticed this, but as you've gotten more into eating like whole foods and less processed foods, like sodium can be way down. Like it doesn't have to be as salty or as sweet to us. But like I've noticed in my cooking, that's definitely reflected then. Like, has
Yeah.
anybody had an issue?
No, I mean, I've never honestly had anyone that just straight up disliked something. It would normally be a preference of like, I don't know, I prefer my broccoli more tender or whatever it is, something very specific like that, or just like the way that they like their meat cooked. I usually prefer things like medium rare, but some people like it a little bit more well done, which is like I wouldn't make for myself, but of course I'm going to do what my clients want. So it's more along those lines, but I think along the lines of like the seasonings and the spices and stuff too, because I'm able to get really high quality produce and protein sources, you don't really need to use as much. I think that's the big difference when you switch to this more whole food, high quality food. You can taste it, and when it's seasonal, you can really taste the nutritional differences in it. So it's kind of using higher quality produce, you end up getting a better result even without a ton of seasonings or sugar, whatever it is.
Mhm. That's very true. So then did you teach yourself how to cook or how did you get into that?
I grew up in a family that was very into cooking. My mom always made all of our meals from scratch. So I kind of was just surrounded by it. She was always into organic. And I mean, we ate packaged foods, but we weren't allowed to really have anything like Lunchables or soda or that kind of stuff, which at the time I was frustrated with, but looking back, I'm glad that that was the case. So yeah, I was just kind of surrounded by cooking all the time, and my family, like my grandparents, really like it. So it was just kind of something I did to help out in the kitchen. And then I enjoyed it and started doing it more in college when I had an apartment, trying to be healthy and cook my own food. Although at the time in college, it was mostly lean chicken breasts and sauteed vegetables because that's what I thought was healthiest. But yeah, it's just been a lot of kind of experimenting. I don't have any actual training in cooking. It's just more a passion that I enjoy pursuing.
I always love to hear the story of how you get started because, like, for you, it stemmed with your family. And I think that's really neat to, like, then see the progression of, like, you cooking in college and, like you had said, with the chicken breast and vegetables. Can you kind of briefly explain, like, why now you would view that maybe as not, like, the ultimate healthiest meal? Because I think a lot of people listening are probably like, wait, that is healthy. But how do you view
Yeah. So I guess my view in college was the classic, like, eat lower calories, eat lower fat, even though I wasn't trying to lose weight. It's just something that's kind of ingrained in your mind. So low fat chicken breast is basically zero fat. It's like just straight up protein, which is why it can get so dried out. And then vegetables, like, everyone says you need to eat your vegetables, and that's the most important thing. So it was like kind of just very bland. I used
that?
spices, but I was worried about using real butter. I didn't really add even like avocado or anything. I would occasionally do like hummus and lettuce. So it was just like a lot of, I don't know, kind of roughage too. And now I'm realized that, fats are really important for our body, especially for women. And vegetables are great, but they're not the only thing that you need to focus on. And definitely, I think for myself too, cooked vegetables, fermented vegetables are easier to digest. And then meat sources that include fat or adding fat to them, because you need fat to actually absorb the nutrients from your food. So if you're eating just steamed broccoli, you're not going to actually absorb a lot of the vitamins in it. So yeah, adding real butter to the broccoli, great. Maybe a little like lemon and garlic too, so it actually has some flavor. But yeah, that's kind of how my progression happened, I'd say.
Yeah, I feel like I very much relate to that too. Of like in college, it was, and like you said, I feel like the low fat has just always been ingrained into like how it was at like how we're supposed to eat. And so I was terrified to use butter or like ghee. It's like no way. Like I didn't even know what that was at the time, honestly. But like I'd be very, very like small amounts of peanut butter on my toast or my oatmeal and barely use any of the avocado. I just enough to taste it, but like I didn't understand the benefit of fat. It was more of like, well, this fat is going to translate into fat in my body, and that's the opposite of what I want. Not really.
Mm-hmm.
That's a completely different type of fat. Like, it's not going to store the fat as fat. Like, you need it, like you said, for nutrient absorption, energy. Your brain is 60% fat. Like, we got to be giving it those healthy fats. So that's really interesting that you had kind of like a similar progression than in how you view food now. Um, so is there anything else you want to share about yourself? Anything? I know we're going to get into the health myths and some hot takes, but anything about you you want people to know?
I think just from all of what I've kind of learned and experienced through myself and through my clients, a lot of it is really being, I think, open minded, which I think is where a lot of these kind of like hot takes and myths go, is not just believing everything that you see or hear online, like ourselves included. We make content to share online, but that doesn't mean that everything we say is what's exactly right for you. So I guess just really, I like to make sure that people feel empowered to make decisions, make educated choices. If you learn that, the whatever pasta sauce you like has some ingredients in it that maybe we wouldn't recommend, you can make the informed choice to continue eating it. Like, it's more so, I just want people to understand what they're eating and understand maybe how things that they're consuming, whether that be food or relationships, whatever body care products, like how that could be impacting you. And then you go and make your choices. So I guess that's like a good way to preface this whole
Yes.
conversation, because at the end of the day, you make your choices for you. Um, and being open minded about those choices though too is very beneficial, I'd say.
Yeah, no, I love that you brought that up because I always say, like, finding people you like, know, and trust, but that doesn't mean you have to believe everything they say is not gospel. Like, what we're sharing, this is just our personal opinions, and there's research I know that we've both done behind to support maybe our opinions about these topics. But if you disagree, that's okay, but also take that as an opportunity to like dive into your own research, like figure out what you want to be true for yourself before you just believe everything.
Yeah, yeah, definitely well said. And if you have a, I think if you have a reason you disagree, like that's great. But I feel like we need to have reasons, not just, no, I disagree. Like have I mean, just do yourself the service of understanding your choices, I think is really the root of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like where they're coming from, because living in the Midwest for us, like organic produce isn't prevalent. And a lot of the farmers around us are conventional farmers. And so growing up, it was like, well, why would I eat organic when everything around me is conventional? And I was very anti-organic. Like it's the same thing. It's the same difference. And then when I finally got past the point of being so stubborn and set in my belief, you actually start to like listen to different research that's being done and looking at the facts between both of them to realize, okay, me being so set in my ways, like maybe that was just something I had believed growing up. It doesn't mean it can't change. Yeah.
Totally. I get that a lot.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Well, let's get into it. We're just
Okay.
gonna have a list here and we're just gonna kind of go through, don't know how far we'll get, but we'll just start first with the first one.
You know what I hate? Being bloated but having no idea why that's happening. That was me for years, in alignment with also living with chronic low back pain. And I was so fed up with it that I finally took my health into my own hands and really started evaluating my diet and how I was moving my body to not only heal the chronic inflammation that was coming from my low back pain, but heal my bloating. If you're listening and you're like, yep, that's me, I'm always bloated, I always feel uncomfortable, I have a solution for you. I have created a one-on-one coaching program that is focused primarily on helping you decrease the overall inflammation in your body through examining various foods and how they affect your body, intolerances that you might have, as well as incorporating the anti-inflammatory diet, which is really just adding in more whole foods to reduce any signs of inflammation and stress that you have in your body. So inflammation can show up in 7 different areas. So bloating and chronic pain is not just the case. This could also be brain fog, fatigue, swelling, acne, water retention, poor quality of sleep, low energy, constipation, diarrhea. I mean, there's a long list, don't get me wrong. So I'm sharing this with you today because I have some really exciting news happening around this program. Right now, it is a 16-week program, which is about 4 months. And I'm going to make it into a 6-month program, which means there are 8 extra modules and weeks for us to work one-on-one together, which I just think is going to provide even more value and really make these habits very long lasting. I've already worked with many women throughout this program, with it being 16 weeks, and they've seen incredible results. But I just want to add a couple more months together. And why I'm telling that to you is because I'm actually offering those next 2 months for free. So if you sign up for one-on-one coaching before December 23rd, you actually get the last 2 months free. So you're only paying for 4 months of coaching, but we're spending 6 months together. I really have such a passion for making quality care accessible to most. This is something that I wish I would have had while I was going through my 3 to 4 year process of trying to figure out what was going on in my own body. But we can do that together in 4 months or now in 6 months. I know there are so many expenses that come up during the holiday season, which is why I want to offer this to you, as well as let you know that I have payment plans for whatever situation you might find yourself in. Just know that I want to work with you to make this possible. I will have the link below in the show notes for both the application, but also the website link to learn more about what is offered in this program. And then we can talk so you can learn more about what's going to be included in those bonus 2 months that we would have together. If you are currently a client, don't worry, you also get this deal. But I wanted to offer this to anybody who's been on the fence about coaching. This is probably the time for you to consider committing, and I would love to just open up that conversation with you. I look forward to talking to you soon and helping you not only decrease your bloating, but all of the other symptoms or signs that you're experiencing, and let's focus on healing together.
This is one I saw on your page, and I'm like, we need to bring this up. The first one is you should only trust dietitians and doctors to talk about nutrition.
This one gets me a lot of heat when I talk about it, and I will explain why I think that this is not the case. So I'll preface it by saying doctors, nutritionists, they go through a ton of training, registered dietitians. So they are essentially experts in their field. Doctors don't really get much nutrition training. So if you're a heart doctor, you might know a lot about how the heart works, but that doesn't necessarily mean you know a lot about how the rest of the body works, which is, I think, a kind of disservice. But anyways, registered dietitians learn a lot about nutrition. They are the only title that can actually be, like, it's a protected title. So you can't just call yourself a registered dietitian unless you go through the schooling. My research, what I've learned is that a lot of these schools are funded and given grants by agrochemical businesses, big food, and big pharma. So unfortunately, the education, the curriculum is biased. That doesn't mean that all registered dietitians are biased, but it means that they are taught more biased education. Their lessons are a little more biased. Also, I think there was like a big story came out recently of how registered dietitians were being paid by like Coca-Cola to promote their products. So with any influencer and paid partnership, you have to take it with a grain of salt. But if you're using your protected title of registered dietitian to promote something that we know is not health promoting, it makes me think that maybe we shouldn't just be blindly trusting these people. And a lot of regular people have a lot of great information to share. Like you and I both aren't registered dietitians, but that doesn't mean we haven't done our own research. It doesn't mean we haven't worked with clients one-on-one. It doesn't mean that we don't have insightful, educational information to share as well. That's how I would sum that up.
Yeah. No, when I learned that dietitians, like their curriculum was created or funded by those organizations, my mind was blown. And I was like, I mean, it makes sense now looking back. I used to work at a hospital and I was in the cardiac rehab area, and the dietitians there were really harshly, like strictly promoting using canola oil and vegetable oil for the cardiac patients, which their research would show, well, it's lower in cholesterol, whatever their reasoning is. But when you look at that, those are also sources of inflammation. Like those oils can cause inflammation. So it's just really interesting then to like hear that and then see the direct correlation of like products they really push or brands they really push on their patients.
Yeah. And that's the same with doctors as well. Like if you're not just talking about nutrition, but you're talking about all medication interventions in general, obviously not all doctors are taking kickbacks or making money off of it, but many big pharma companies are paying doctors, and they're not necessarily like giving them a paycheck, but they're buying the whole staff lunch, or they're giving them like random incentives, or they're having these funded events. So it's not like, okay, this registered dietitian, this doctor is literally getting a paycheck to promote it, but everything around them is geared towards influencing their choice to like promote something to you. And so I think it's just important to remember that. And also, never just taking someone's word for something of I have to do this, even if I don't feel comfortable with it. There's always other options or other opinions. So just because, your doctor or someone says something, I mean, I'm not telling you not to listen to your doctor, but like check in with yourself, see how you feel about that choice as well, and don't let them just tell you what to do.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Is like checking in with yourself. I love that you brought that up because your body's gonna know, like, dude, does this feel right? Does this not feel right? And then try to evaluate and standing up for yourself in those situations can feel kind of uncomfy, but I think it's better to be proactive with that than to just go along with whatever it is and not feel aligned with maybe how something's being treated.
Yeah, I think that's why it's so important to just ask questions. It's not like there's nothing wrong with asking questions or wanting to gain clarity or wanting to take some time to make a decision or whatever it is. You're entitled to ask those questions. You're paying someone to help you, so they should help you. It's not just them telling you what to do. It should be like, I think when you're working with a healthcare professional or health coach, even, it should be a mutually, like, the decision should be agreed upon mutually. It should be a back and forth. It shouldn't be a one-sided, one-way conversation. Um, so yeah, it's just standing up for yourself, like you said.
Yeah, you said that really well. Okay, moving into the next one. Raw milk is harmful and unclean.
This is a good one. Okay, so I started drinking raw milk probably a year and a half or 2 years ago after not being able to really digest dairy and kind of discovering I was lactose intolerant. I learned that raw dairy, because it's not pasteurized, meaning it's not heated to high temperatures to kill off the like microbes in it, it also has more enzymes. It has more nutrients. Any food you cook, you're gonna denature it. You're gonna destroy enzymes and nutrients, even vegetables, meat, anything. So with milk, when you drink it raw, you're consuming more of these enzymes, more of these nutrients. There are live microbes in it, and it can be a health promoting food for many people. A lot of people also find that they can digest it easier because it is more closely like matched to the actual real food. It's less of a processed version of it. The reason that people say raw milk is unsafe is because, yes, you're not destroying pathogens in it. So there is a chance that harmful bacteria, whatever it is, can make their way into the milk and you consume it and you could get sick. The big difference, though, between raw milk that is made for human consumption and raw milk that is meant to be pasteurized is that raw milk made for human consumption has to be made, or should be, like, you should only buy it from trusted sources where the cows are raised in a healthy fashion, they're cleaned really well, the milk is tested periodically. Raw milk that's meant to be pasteurized is often from factory farming operations. The cows are not treated well, they're not healthy, they're not cleaned, and the pasteurization allows that practice to continue. So we're essentially able to create more milk because it doesn't have to be as high quality, because we just heat it, destroy all the harmful bacteria, and sell it to consumers. So realistically, what should happen is an overhaul of the entire dairy industry and the quality. But for now, relying, if you can get raw milk, I don't think that it's something that should be so, like, it's illegal in more states than many drugs are. And I think there's huge incentives from the dairy industry to keep it illegal because it's small farms that are creating raw dairy. It's hard to do, from my understanding, it's hard to make raw dairy on a mass scale because of the importance of cleanliness and healthy cows. So, yeah, I have no problems drinking raw milk. I've never had an issue. I can digest it just fine. There are a lot of great options out there. Just definitely don't, I wouldn't drink raw milk that is meant to be pasteurized, though.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. So with the lactose piece, because I have always, like I've discovered I'm lactose intolerant, but do you think that raw milk has been a contributing factor to like why you're now able to tolerate dairy better? Or do you strictly just do raw milk product or like the A2 or A1 um,
I think,
byproducts?
yeah, so I do believe that the raw dairy, amongst other things, like just gut health in general, has allowed me to consume all types of dairy. If I go out to a coffee shop, a lot of times I bring my own milk, but if I don't, I will just get their normal whole milk. I'll eat ice cream that's typically pasteurized if you're out. And I can digest that fine. I do really like the A2 because it is a different protein. So a lot of people find that easier to digest. But I think that it has to do with the nutrients in it. It's honestly hard to say. And I do think that there's not enough science to really make these claims for everyone. And a lot of it honestly is anecdotal. Like, I won't deny that. But when you have hundreds or thousands of people with the same story, there has to be something to it. If it's all in our minds, then like it still is working. If it's a placebo effect, I'll take it.
Right. That's the thing. Like, it's placebo effect. It's still working. So, like, does it really matter?
Yeah.
I always have trouble with that, with like being lactose intolerant. Like, is it because there's something going on? Like, I've also seen like emotional, like, stress can cause digest or like
Hmm.
intolerance or dairy products. I just have always struggled in knowing like, can it be fixed? Can it be like, I don't know. And I don't think like trying raw dairy would be a bad option to just see if you notice any like adverse effects of it, or if you just feel good and you notice your body's able to digest it a lot better than regular, like highly pasteurized dairy.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that I can say about this. I think one is that when you look at raw milk versus ultra pasteurized, which is what's normally in stores, it's almost the difference between like a real whole food from nature and then like an ultra processed version of it. So it's not the same food. And then I also think that the quality of the food really matters. So if it's coming from like a healthy grass-fed cow, that's mostly like in the sun and living its life versus like a factory farmed animal, that's going to have an impact on the health of the milk and how your body sees it. I've also talked about this before as well of, from my understanding now, a lot of food intolerances aren't just like an innate food intolerance that you're kind of stuck with. Allergies are different. That's something that I'm not as well versed in. An intolerance, though, a lot of times it's just a symptom of gut dysbiosis, intestinal permeability, which we call leaky gut. And essentially, the food that you are ingesting, your body sees as an invader of sorts. And so it elicits an immune response. So that basically makes me believe, and from all of these stories, that yes, it can be reversed, and also that intolerances kind of change depending on where you are in your life. Like those food intolerance tests, I don't think are very accurate because you can be intolerant to something one day and then not the next. Honestly, our gut permeability, like the lining, changes every day. It changes with the seasons. Um, Maybe when you're more like your immune system is on heightened alert, if you're sick, like it might elicit a response more. So I think there's like a lot of different, I don't know, variables that go into it. But I definitely don't think it's something that is 100% set in stone and we have no way of reversing it or minimizing the symptoms.
Yeah. I love that you shared that. I mean, I just learned so much from what you just said. Like, so much to think about now. Like, that's just always been the area where I like, yeah, it's just hard because especially too, like when clients come to you, or maybe when you're cooking for clients too, and they have an intolerance, it's like depending on what sensitivity test, it might not even be accurate if they are intolerant to that. So being open to other options, and I think trying new things to see if your body can handle it, and being like really in tune with your body is another thing I've had to learn. Like actually acknowledging how you feel 6 to 8 hours after you eat something. Like noticing what feels normal and what doesn't can tell you a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like one little last piece of it is, so a lot of people will say that they're lactose intolerant or they think that it's the lactose. It could also be something else. Like it could be the casein proteins. It's not necessarily the lactose. So there is, like you mentioned, A2, that's a different type of protein. A lot of people can tolerate A2 dairy. So they have milk, yogurt, all of that that's made with A2. So that's another thing to try if you really want to incorporate dairy because it is super nutrient dense. And a lot of the A2 in the stores is not raw, but I'll still consume it because it's from 100% grass fed, it's high quality. I still believe it adds value to my diet. So that's another option. And then also fermented, like a kefir, I think is amazing for gut health. And because it's fermented, it's lower in lactose. Same with like a lot of hard cheeses. So there are different options to try, like you said.
So is a dairy cow in your future? You gonna milk
I
one yourself?
I would honestly love to have one, but I recently learned that they produce like 6 gallons of milk a day or something insane. So on my own, I definitely could not go through that much, but I think it would be very cool to have a community dairy cow or have some type of like, I really want to get into cheese making. So a cheese making
Gosh,
operation could be interesting.
maybe that'll be like your brand one day. Is like you make your own cheese.
That would be so
I'm
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I heard that about a dairy cow, because I was like, well, we might as well try the raw milk thing. I'm like, let's just get a cow because we live on a farm. And I'm like, okay, you have to milk them 2 times a day. And as two people, like, we're not going to be able to drink all this milk. There's no
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. I've heard of people because they didn't really realize they got one and they had to give the cow away because it was just an insane amount of milk. The other option though would be a goat because goat milk can actually be potentially more health promoting. It has a different fat structure. The fat globules are actually smaller, so it's easier to digest typically. And then goat and sheep also usually tends to be A2 casein anyways. So a lot of people find they do better with goat and sheep milk. And then of course goats do not produce as much milk since they're smaller. So that could be fun.
Okay, that's an alternative. Mini goats, that's like my thing. Anything small. I'm like, oh, like mini cows, mini goats would be so fun. But
That
then
would
you're also
be,
making a byproduct, so it's perfect.
yeah, yeah. I think that could be an interesting one to try. I don't know how much milk goats produce though, but definitely less than 6 gallons a day.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Let's move in to eggs and bacon are too high in cholesterol.
Okay, so this one is interesting because I feel like the studies debunking this one actually came out fairly recently. It was a few years ago when we realized that the cholesterol in our food, dietary cholesterol, does not have much of a correlation with our blood cholesterol. So, similarly to how eating fat does not just translate directly into gaining fat in our body, it's very different. Your body produces cholesterol on its own. Cholesterol is necessary for health. So there should not be a major fear around cholesterol. Eggs specifically have so many nutrients in them. They're a great source of protein, healthy fats, choline, which is amazing for brain health. They're also just like so convenient and typically very affordable as well, and easy to prepare. So I think for a lot of people, removing them from their diet is probably not a great option. Bacon also, I think if you're getting high quality bacon, it can be a great addition to your diet. I think a lot of bacon at the stores is probably not ideal because it is fairly highly processed. So it really just kind of depends. But I would never say to like limit these foods or, fully restrict them from your diet. The piece of, what can raise cholesterol is we know a lot of things like refined carbohydrates and sugars, which is not something that most people talk about, but that's a huge driver of increasing cholesterol. And then for some people, saturated fats can technically increase cholesterol, although it's only specific types of saturated fats and it's not for everyone. It's more of a, from what I know, a genetic predisposition, and that's kind of just dependent on the person. But when you say like, oh, a burger is bad for you because it raises cholesterol, I would argue a burger is not. If the burger meat is the best part of it, it's the bun, the French fries, and the milkshake that are probably going to be driving your cholesterol. Um, so that's my piece on that. And then also fiber has been shown to be really beneficial in lowering cholesterol as well. So yeah. And then also, yeah, cholesterol is not bad. There's really lacking research showing a direct correlation between increased levels of cholesterol and heart disease. A lot of people have heart attacks and have healthy cholesterol levels. So yeah, that one's kind of like a we saw this opportunity to promote or like take blame away from sugar, and we're going to run with it when it's not really realistic.
Yeah. And probably when they took the attention away from sugar is when they changed the sugar to be the high fructose corn syrups and kind of like a, hey, pay attention over here because we're doing this without really
Yeah.
telling. Yeah. I think it's this concept too of high quality, like that just keeps coming up. High quality whole foods, like real foods. I had done a post recently and it was like what I eat or what I have on my grocery list to reduce inflammation, like my anti-inflammatory grocery list. And this gal had commented like, why is bacon on there? Bacon is highly inflammatory. And I'm like, well, I think it really depends on the person and your health conditions and, the quality that you're consuming. And she just like went off on how well, you need to look into doctor studies because doctors say that it's not healthy. And I'm like, okay, I'm really glad you've done your research because you really cited it in that. So now I've kind of started this phrase of like, it's real food, I'm gonna eat it. Like, and now my mom, she'll make bacon. She's like, it's real food. It's okay for us to eat it. Like, there's so much crap out there that we could be consuming. Like, I don't think the eggs and bacon are going to be the reason for your declining health, you know?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think people try to make everything about health black and white, and it just can't be because it's all so contextual. It's like, okay, if you are not eating eggs and you're replacing them with like, I don't know, oatmeal for breakfast with a bunch of sugar, like that's definitely not a better choice. It's also you're not going to feel as good if you're not eating enough protein, or it's like having a few slices of bacon with your meal is not going to destroy your health versus like the people who, will be eating just plant-based meat or something. And it's every single day they're eating plant-based meat because they believe that that's what's healthier for them. So it's like, what are you replacing your foods with, or what are you restricting and then, take like consuming instead? I think that's a big thing to think about. And then also just everyone is individual. Like everyone has different needs, different nutrient requirements. Like different access, different in like preferences. So yeah, I think the real food thing is really important. Like if it's a real food, I'm gonna eat it. I like that because that's how I try to see it as well.
Yeah. Well, and if you look at the ingredients, like in a real egg, like it's an egg, right? Or if
Hmm.
you look at the vegan or plant-based egg that you can get, like just egg or whatever
Oh
it's called,
yeah,
and you look at the ingredients, it's like it's very easy, like unless you're doing it for moral reasons, eating plant-based, like I think it's easy to see a significant difference in a real egg versus something they've made in a factory.
yeah, yeah. It's drastically different. And also like, yeah, I mean, if you're doing it because you just don't want to consume animal products for your own moral, ethical reasons, like fine, I'm not going to force anyone to do anything. But if you're doing it for a health reason, it's definitely not going to be as healthy and it's not going to offer the same nutrients. Like the nutrients in animals are more bioavailable, they're more readily absorbed by our bodies versus plants. And they're made by nature in this way. Like they have the perfect combination of fats, nutrients, whatever it is, macros in them versus like something a just egg. You're trying to piece together all of those nutrients, but you're missing the point of the food matrix and how they all work together. So, I mean, that's the same with a lot of supplements. Like you think, vitamin C is great for you, but it's like you're missing the rest of the actual orange or whatever it is, which might actually have the whatever it is that's like creating the reaction or adding to the benefit. So I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about. Like you can, on paper, it has the same whatever protein, fat, carbs, but it doesn't have those same micronutrients in the same formula.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's such an interesting point for you to bring up. I'm so glad you talked and touched on that. Um, there's so much more we could talk about. I'm gonna have to have you on in the future because listening to you talk about all this just gives such a good perspective. Like even as you're talking, I'm just like absorbing it because it's so interesting to just get different perspectives on maybe things we used to believe or how maybe those beliefs can change when we just look into the research and what's backing up our reason for believing something. I want to wrap this up with a signature question. All right. So on this podcast, we talk a lot about our purpose and how it's not necessarily linked to a specific job or a role, but rather the characteristics you possess that allow you to live a meaningful life. So, Fiona, what would you say is your purpose right now?
I think my purpose, I mean, I guess it does kind of align with my job, but just inspiring people, and really kind of being an example of the possibilities that are out there, and being an example of, health and having a fulfilled life. So just inspiring people to want to work towards that. And then, yeah, just kind of sharing that with people and hoping that it sticks. I try not to like tell people what to do. I try more so to just share my knowledge and my experience, and then hope that that rubs off. And when it does, it feels really great. And it's kind of a nice, like, I don't know, a spiral effect or whatever you would call it. So yeah, inspiring people, I think, would be what I'd say.
Yeah. And just from an outside perspective, like you're absolutely doing that, which is so cool. Like you said, like your job is aligning with your purpose, which is really unique. And you live that out really well. So can you just share where people can find you? Where can people get in contact with you? Can I drop all your socials?
Sure. Yeah. So also thank you for that. That was very sweet. So I am Feel Good with Fee on Instagram. I also have a website, feelgoodwithfee.com. Those are like the two main places that I am at. So you can reach me there. Feel free to send me a DM or follow me on Instagram. And then I also have recipes on my website, but I honestly post them mostly on Instagram. So you can just check all of that out.
Perfect. And I'll also have that linked in the description of the episode. But thank you again so much for being here. It's been so nice to talk to you.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll definitely have to do this again so we can go over a few more of those myths.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so let's go ahead and close this episode in prayer. I am starting a new segment of prayer requests. So on Monday mornings on my Instagram story, I'll be putting a little question box where you can put in your prayer requests, but you can also send them to me throughout the week and I'll include them in the next episode. So I want to first talk about the prayer requests that I had received this week, just because then maybe you can add them to your prayer request list and we can all just be praying for each other. So I just got a couple prayer requests for this first time around. The first one being that my dad and brothers find God again, and the second that this is a nourishing holiday for all who are alone. So with that, let's go ahead and close in prayer. So dear Lord, just thank you for this day. Thank you for the holiday season, and that regardless of if people are with family and friends or alone, that they just feel nourished and that they feel taken care of, and that, we're able to really not only spend time reflecting on what we're thankful for this Thanksgiving, but also what you've given us. And just ask that those people in our lives that we love find you, and that they turn to you if they haven't for a while, or if they feel disconnected, that they just feel a connection to you, not only this Thanksgiving, but in the months and the years to come, that they just feel closer and closer to you each day. Thank you for people like Fiona who come and talk on this podcast and share so much of their knowledge and her knowledge about health and food, and that whoever is listening to this episode feels encouraged to do their own research and become a conscious consumer, not overwhelmed or bombarded with information, but rather just inspired to look more into what they're eating and how they're fueling their bodies moving forward. Please be with those who struggle with their relationship with food, and that this Thanksgiving feels nourishing for them, that they not only eat and enjoy the food that they're consuming this season, but that they pay attention to those relationships around them and really just take it all in and have less anxiety and stress and fear around food. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. All right, so with that, you can follow along with my life at Nourish with Bailey on Instagram, TikTok, Lemonade. I'm Bailey Seaton on Facebook. let's get connected. Let's have a conversation. And with that, I will talk to you again next Wednesday. Bye.